Hello out there, my name is Laolu Akonde and you are on to Inside Sources. But first, as my take for today entitled, Who Will Tell the President Part 12, with the subtitle, Time Up for the Ransom Economy. Who will tell the president that beyond the noise and rancor of partisan seasons, there are settled facts about what his administration has done and what it hasn't done, where it is failing and where it is succeeding. Let the truth be told. This president has taken steps on insecurity that his predecessors either sidestepped or outright rejected. This is fact, whether we like him or not. He's the first president to activate a genuine constitutional process towards state policing. That is a fact. But we must now be vigilant, and someone needs to tell the president regarding that the legislation must be carefully shaped and properly timed in the best interest of Nigerian people. It is also a fact that this president approved the expansion of military divisions from 8 to 12, an overdue correction to an overstretched armed forces. This is a good move, and we must again vigilantly demand and await a diligent implementation. Before then, the president also named a Homeland Security advisor, which is a realization that security coordination has been a sticking point in our national security architecture. Yet, another good move that we must demand and await diligent implementation. And just weeks ago, under this president, we witnessed the rescue of abducted citizens in our state without the payment of ransom. That has not happened in a long time. Even some of the suspects have now been convicted. So I call it a proof of concept. A proof of concept that government can curb terrorism, can defeat banditry, and can end mass abduction without turning our country into a ransom-driven jungle. That is what the Oyo rescue has taught us. No objective mind can therefore deny some of these achievements of the Tinubu administration. But the killings have not abated. The fair tax Nigerians are paying hasn't stopped. Yet for the first time in a while, there is hope in the equation. And so in that same spirit of truth-telling, we ask today of the things that has to be done. Who will tell the president that the termination of ransom payments must now become a serious, even core federal government policy, that ending the ransom economy is no longer optional. It is imperative, no compromises. It is, to borrow the words of William Shakespeare, and I quote, "It is a tide in the affairs of men which, taken at the flood, leads on to fortune. Omitted, all voyage of their life is bound in shallows and mysteries." Unquote. The Oyo State Rescue is that tide. Who will tell the president that treating ransom payments with kid gloves must now be treated like a profound threat to our national security? Who will tell the president that speculation is rife and dangerously becoming believable that elected officials and others are implicated directly or by insinuation in the sharing of ransom money with terrorists? Who will tell the president that Mr. Samaila Kagama of Borno State alleged this on national television, that government paid Boko Haram $5 billion for a 1 month quote-unquote ceasefire. But the terrorists are claiming, according to him, that they received only $1.5 billion. Who will tell the president that the same Mr. Kagama said just days ago regarding the Ngoche abduction in Borno, that communities are now negotiating directly with the abductors for release fees, and that after the so-called release, the same terrorists return only weeks later to re-abduct the same people for another round of payment? It meant that this is no longer just kidnapping, that it is now a notorious franchising, a cantankerous and evil business model. Somebody needs to update the president on that. And when citizens ask for state protection, they are told all manners of tales. Why that has not become a reality, why that has become a destabilizing challenge, even as the citizens hear of money that should be meant for security finding its way into backdoor deals with terrorists. We will tell the president that part of the reason we must wage total war on corrosive corruption in this country is this bloody scandal of ransom payments. Isn't it bloody? Because when public trust collapses, criminals will fill the vacuum. If the president struggles, for instance, to deal swiftly with rot inside government, whether it's the exposure of a fake presidential agency, the persistent allegations of payments of bribe for federal government MDA jobs, huge contracts awarded without fidelity to procurement rules, or the questions around constituency projects, funds with no delivery, or the report of several financial leakages and palliatives that never reach the people. If the president is struggling with dealing with those things, then we may essentially be funding the very monsters we claim to fight. And let it be said plainly, when these allegations persist and fester, they become a feeder system for this ransom-driven economy and its debauchery. They tell terrorists and bandits that the state is negotiable. They tell communities that justice is for sale. They tell every Nigerian that blood money can be laundered through the same channels as public money, and no one is being questioned, and no one is compelled to answer by law. That is how a nation can slide from real governance into gangsterism. God forbid, we must pray. We cannot be a society where blood money is drawn from our commonwealth and shared like dividend between the people that swore to protect us and the terrorists. We cannot be a country where release simply means see you next month for another installment. That stinks. By every measure of decency and governance, it reeks. We will tell the president that correcting this grievous aberration, this wanton ignominy, is a task that demands courage and that demands it urgently. We will tell the president that if he desires any modicum of an enduring legacy, he must now brace himself up. We will tell the president the issue is not merely the accuracy of Kegama's claims, as outrageous as those claims may sound. The urgent issue is that such a story finds traction, because in today's Nigeria, that story is believable. And being believed, it will influence how people conduct themselves. We will tell the president that the perception of corruption at the expense of national security is alarming. We will tell the president that even in official corridors abroad, specifically in Washington, D.C., there are whispers and reports of Nigerian government officials caught moving money from official coffers to extremist groups with the excuse that one violent group is being used to fight another. These things are coming out. We will tell the president that these coded narratives are no longer confined to back rooms. They are spilling into the international public space. It requires us going forward, taking decisive and conclusive action. It requires the president to have a zero tolerance principle against corruption, against ransom payments. And punishment must be meted out, especially for those in government who partake in this bloody travesty. To be fair, Mr. Kegama himself said he does not believe that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is involved in this troubling aberration. Thank goodness for that. But someone needs to tell the president, because a nation cannot survive when peace is purchased from its enemies. Because a state cannot endure when citizens must pay ransom for a fragment of safety. Because history will not remember the budgets, only the courage to end this jungle of ransom payments. Mr. President, we are hanging on your words that you said on March 17, 2026. And I'm quoting you now. There is no place in Nigeria where terrorists will find safety. We will locate them, confront them, and completely defeat them. Nigeria will not succumb to fear. Mr. President, those are your words, and you are the commander-in-chief. It is why you were elected. It is why we are holding you to that promise, to those words. The time to move from words to action is now. The time to end this ransom economy jungle is now. Time is up for ransom payments in Nigeria. And Mr. President, we trust that you will get it done. And there you have it. Inside Sources goes full blast right after this. Welcome back to Inside Sources. Today I'm leading the show with a conversation on some of the dynamics that we are seeing and hearing regarding 2027, even looking at the global dimensions of it, and then a discussion indeed about some of the things that has happened in the U.S. regarding Nigeria. To join me in that very important conversation is a U.S.-based Nigerian lawyer who has been a long-standing democracy and human rights advocate. He's actually the winner of the Federal Government Award of Merit to Nigerians in Diaspora. I'd like to welcome back to Inside Sources, Mr. Emmanuel Ogebe. Emmanuel, good to see you again.
Always a pleasure to be here. Hello.
All right, Emmanuel, I'm going to tie you back to some of the things you did in this country before you left, your involvement in national affairs, and therefore use that to ask you this question because you are very familiar with both of them. The campaigns of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and the campaign team, I'm talking about the teams now, of former Vice President Atiku, they've been making a big deal about corruption, calling each other names. The Atiku campaign said, well, look, we've sent to members of the U.S. Congress and to the White House, the details about Mr. Tinubu's case in the U.S. And of course, the Tinubu camp responded and said, well, the Americans know about the William Jefferson's case, Halliburton, and all of that. You are familiar with all these issues and these people. What's your take on this, Emmanuel?
Well, it's interesting that the reason why our presidential elections are internationalized is because of the weak rule of law at home in Nigeria. If people have been held accountable for their actions in Nigeria, we would not need to be going to foreign fora to pursue some kind of accountability. But the fact of the matter is this. Both President Tinubu and Vice President Atiku have legal messes in the U.S. And both of them were related to money laundering. In the case of Atiku, he was never charged in court. What happened was that the U.S. Congress did a comprehensive investigation about illicit foreign funds, and Atiku was used as the primary case study. And I believe the amount involved was about $40 million or so. And they were saying that, he had a wife who was living here.
Yes.
And she had a charity. So, a lot of funds were coming in and going out. And ultimately, she left the U.S. and Atiku himself stopped coming to the U.S. So that is what is on record, a legislative record. It's not a criminal record. Now, when you talk about the Jefferson case, where Congressman Jefferson actually ended up in prison.
Yes.
I was consulted on that case by Jefferson's team. I know the facts of that case. Atiku was not the target in that case. It was Jefferson. And Jefferson claimed to have collected money that he was going to give Atiku as a bribe. And I think it was $100,000.
Yeah.
From reading the case, I knew that it was fake. Atiku can dash you $100,000. He cannot collect $100,000 for you. From you. So it was the Jefferson, the congressman, who was the primary target and who was convicted. Now, when we go to Tinubu's case, his case is different in the sense that there was an actual court proceeding by the Department of Justice against him, also for money laundering. But this did not involve illicit inflows from Nigeria or corruption money. It involved illicit drug finances. So both cases have been well documented in the U.S. system. One in the judicial system, one in the legislative system. And it's interesting that because Nigeria doesn't hold its leaders to account, now they have to fight in the US about all of this. But let me throw in something else interesting for you. Even though Peter Obi has no criminal case in the US, he's spotless. Guess what? His vice presidential candidate, Kwakwanso, recently became a subject of interest in the US Congress and is being blacklisted, for religious persecution. I think that was an unfortunate call. Kano is a very, very problematic state for religious freedom, but I think that Kwakwanso should not have been the ideal person to have been cited. But those are my quick thoughts on that.
Yeah, so let me just take it from the Kwakwanso end, because Kwakwanso said a few days ago, actually on our channel, to say that they've removed his name from that list. Are you aware whether that has in fact happened?
I'm not aware that has happened, and we will check, with our contacts in Congress. But you know how, bicameral legislatures work. One house proposes a bill, and then the other brings its own counterparts, and they reconcile. So it is possible that on the Senate side, they decided not to include his name in the reconciliation process. I know that some of us were trying to push that in the Senate side, they should include temporary protective status for Nigerians, and they should include resettlement for Nigerian refugees. So in that mix, a lot of things can happen. Things can be added, things can be removed.
Okay.
So we'll check to confirm.
Okay, and we're going to come to that broad issue. But so I wanted to ask you that in terms of the choices that are before the Nigerian people, and in terms of what ought to be the winning argument, you have been a democracy activist yourself, and human rights activist, and all of that, and a lawyer, and you're based in Washington, D.C. What do you think is, what does it, and you made a point that it's because the rule of law in Nigeria is not as entrenched as it ought to be. But in terms of the narratives that these teams are pushing, do you think it's smart of a narrative for either teams, Tinubu and Atiku, to be pushing corruption charges against each other? Do you think that's a smart move by either of them?
I don't know whether it was Fela who sang a song. I think it was "You Be Thief, I No Be Thief" or something like that.
Yeah.
We have a kettle and a pot, contesting against each other. Which one is blackest at the bottom? And, that is a distraction. Look, let me put this very starkly. When Tinubu was governor of Lagos, he essentially bought off the state. When Atiku was vice president, he essentially bought off a lot of state resources. So anything one accuses one of, the other has his other finger pointing at them as well. And for me, the situation here is very clear. Out of the entire 36 governors who are seeking a second term, if you want to count those who have performed so well that their re-election is not in doubt, you will start with Labour Governor Oti. Can you imagine? He is a one-state governor. In other words, Labour has no other state. And their only state governor. Already in Abia State, people are asking if his wife can run in future so that when he finishes, she will continue for him.
Wow.
You need to understand, in Igbo land, they have a terrible track record of governance. And this man has already made such a mark that he is being returned virtually unopposed. If Tinubu and others had performed in such a manner, they will not need to be trading insults on who is a thief or who is not a thief. The fact of the matter is that there has been systemic governance failure. And the Tinubu who revolutionized Lagos, we have not seen his fingerprint or his footprints in his governance of Nigeria in the past 3 years. This is why they're fighting on distractions.
Interesting. And the song you had referenced, indeed, is Fela, "You be thief, I no be thief, you be robber, I no be robber, you be having robber, no be having robber, argument. I mean, because I find it so destructive and completely ingenious that is what presidential campaigns in Nigeria has become. But let's move along by asking you, where do you think US-based Nigerians and Nigerians in diaspora, where do you think they are? How are they perceiving all of this ahead of 2027?
Well, as you know, the diaspora has become more and more energized and more interested in politics in Nigeria, even though we've been denied the vote. I have said before that we're the most politically disenfranchised people, despite being the most economically advantaged people. We remit $22 billion to Nigeria every year, which is more than, what is generated by NNPC. So Nigeria's greatest value is its people more than its oil. Yet we do not have the right to vote. But you will recall that, of course, APC brought Nigerian politics into the US because, there were people held town halls and so on and so forth during the Buhari run of 2015. And of course, in 2023, Obi, had massive town halls. I think he had about 7 town halls across North America in a period of 1 week. So the diaspora has become very interested. I think that the momentum of the diaspora was towards Obi the last time. This time around, I don't know what it will be. But again, we don't have votes here. So our impact might be might be very limited.
Okay, let's move along to the global dimensions of the 2027 Nigerian election, especially the presidential election. I am aware that some congressmen like Radi Moore and other insinuations around White House and the Congress, we've been hearing that they are going to be paying attention to what is happening in Nigeria. I think Radi Moore was reported to have even said the U.S. wants to be sure that there's going to be a free and fair election. I wanted to ask you, Emmanuel, I mean, you are based there. What are you hearing? What are you seeing in terms of the attention the Americans, government and people are paying to 2027?
Yeah, so I would say that before now, there had not been much talk about the elections. The focus was on the Christian genocide. The focus was on CPC. That was end of last year when the president announced the designation. But more recently, people are beginning to talk about the elections. And here's why it is interesting. I can tell you for free that the Obama administration was very interested in the emergence of Buhari. We know the facts behind that. Now, in 2023, very interestingly, I was involved in some of the election observation. The U.S. said that election was fraudulent and flawed, but they turned around and sent a delegation, a high-level delegation for the inauguration of a flawed election. So they were speaking from two sides of the mouth. Absolutely. Now, I think I've said this on your show before. The fact of the matter is that the Democratic government actually gave Tinubu a lot of cover. And there are two primary reasons why the U.S. gave him a lot of cover. One was that because of that case he had in Chicago, he was vulnerable. There are some people who believe, he is an asset and all of that. I'm one of those who will say that that is very likely. Cases of that nature, the U.S. government will settle with you so that you give them something in return. They did that with Shagori. Shagori was under prosecution for injecting Nigerian money into elections and elected people here. A congressman is in prison now in America for having taken Shagori's money. And the U.S. government decided not to prosecute him. And they said in the court documents that he cooperated with them on certain matters. So as a courtesy, they are stopping this prosecution. That is how they operate. You used to be here. You know how it is. So what I believe is the second reason why they gave him cover is because of his pro-democracy history. Like I said, he has relations going back many years. And so some of the people involved, and he knows who I'm talking about, marketed him to the US and said, look, we've known this Bobo for long. Whether you like him or not, he knows how to do things. Let us just back him. And so that regime, the Democrat regime that gave him cover, has left. And for the first time, he finds himself very vulnerable on the US side. And that is why, when you look at what has happened in Venezuela, where Trump said that the election was rigged and decided to take them out, there's reason for concern. Now, let me add something. As you know, in the past week or so, there have been pronouncements on Nigeria in the US Congress. There have been amendments tying aid to, freedom of religion and all that. It came immediately after Tinubu announced again that his running mate will be Shetima. In other words, he's maintaining a Muslim ticket, in violation of the balancing principle in Nigeria. But even worse, we know Shetima's antecedents. So I don't know who misadvised him to bring the person who was most noted for the security failures and recklessness that allowed Chibok abductions to happen, and you make him your running mate when they are telling you that you've not been taking insecurity seriously. So again, that was a disaster, and you can see there was immediate reaction here as a result of that.
Okay, in defense of the president and the vice president Shetima, the president argues that it's going to be a political suicide for him not to recognize that the North have a Muslim majority. And in defense of the vice president, people have been saying that if we are to remove him, that will create an in-house, upheaval in the party. So don't you think those factors are also? I mean, since you talk about it, as tough that you have to be careful about.
Again, that is, I think a laughable excuse. He is the president and commander-in-chief. He should not be talking like that at this point. When we all fought for June 12th for Abiola to be president, was it because Yorubas were the majority in Nigeria? No. But we all said, listen, let power shift. If you insist that only Muslims must rule, the Yorubas have Muslims to give them a chance. And that is why we backed Muslim ticket, because we knew that a Muslim Southerner is more liberal, less radical, and less lethal than a Northern Muslim. And that is what the principle of June 12 is. So if the president of Nigeria cannot expand freedom and justice and equality for other Nigerians, then he has annulled and abrogated the legacy of June 12, which he's a beneficiary of.
Okay.
He's a president today because Abiola died for this issue. And he shouldn't now shrink the political space for Northern Nigerian Christians.
Interesting. Now, there has been, I picked this up, the buzz around the party and some of the, hierarchy, that the Northern Christians, especially those of them in the APC, they should get a reward if they are going to throw their support behind the president again. That means the president should also support them in 2031 to have somebody from that part of the country, a Northern Christian, to run for president. If that were to happen, will you consider that a fair, will it be a fair deal, Emmanuel? Because, and I know, I know you are also from the Middle Belt. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so before I answer that, let me also point out that this president currently has over 30 states as members of his ruling party, including Northern Middle Belt states that he lost. He has now co-opted them into the ruling party. So he cannot be saying that, it will be political suicide for him to try and change his VP running mate when he has taken over virtually the entire machinery of the political apparatus of Nigeria. But that said, yes, that proposal has been made that after he rules, he should hand over to a Northern Nigerian Christian. But let me say two things in respect to that. The first is, after Tinubu ruled in Lagos, nobody else has ruled again. Whether we like it or not, nobody else has ruled. Everybody who is there is a caretaker for Tinubu. Okay? I do not see a Nigeria where after Tinubu finishes as president, he will allow anybody else to be there who is not a caretaker. And this is why the takeover of all the parties is happening, of all the states is happening.
But Nigeria is more okay. Make your point. Finish.
Okay. Secondly, we're saying that this is the promise for the future. Was that not the same kind of agreement he had with Buhari? And then when the time came, Buhari sabotaged him. So these kinds of agreements are not enforceable. We would rather have representation now and know that he cares for us than have another 4 years knowing that this man didn't care for us, he didn't reflect us in the system, and we have no assurance that in the future he's going to imbibe us.
Okay.
So it needs to be addressed now.
Okay. Well made. Now let me make a response to the point about the caretaker and all of that. Do you think, Emmanuel, that Lagos State is the same like Nigeria? Don't you think Nigeria is a different kettle of fish entirely? While it was possible to have a Bola Tinubu continue to influence Lagos politics because of the nature of Lagos politics, how do you think that is possible on a prolonged terms in Nigeria with all of the competing forces, both structural and personal?
Yeah, well, that's a very good question. The fact of the matter is this: General Buhari did two things to try and change the political map of Nigeria and ensure northern hegemony. One was bringing in Fulanis from across the sub-region into Nigeria and infiltrating all of the states. In fact, I was shocked to learn just this week that even Bayelsa, the creeks were occupied by Fulanis. Wow. So that was part of the strategy, that if they didn't get power, they were going to do whatever they were going to do. But the second thing he did was to build a rail line of $4 billion into Niger to make it possible for Nigerians to come in and vote in Nigerian elections and go back. Now, that structure, who knows how effective it is and how it is going. But what Tinubu has done, which is very interesting, is the takeover of those states. I can assure you, somebody who can control over 30 states in Nigeria is not somebody to be toyed with. Someone who can control Lagos. You even saw that they tried to vote against him, when he was running for president. He still found his way to fight and reclaim Lagos, at least in the governorship, even though he lost in the presidency. Yeah.
Very, very, very interesting points, and quite a lot of expectations are ahead of us in terms of what is going to happen in 2027. But let's move on to some of the letters that we have seen, some of the developments from the United States. Just like you referred to, there is this Florida Congressman, Congressman Gregory Stoop from Florida, who spoke about a bill that will freeze U.S. aid to Nigeria until they believe that there is, that there has been a decline sufficiently of religious persecution. And then right after that, we see the U.S. president writing President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and saying that he's very happy, he's very proud to stand with him in the fight against terror. And of course, the presidency, brought that letter out as a trophy. How do you read those developments? On the one hand, you have the Congress saying that, look, we're going to pass this bill and we're going to freeze further aid to Nigeria until we believe that religious persecution has been dealt with. And then on the other hand, you have the U.S. president replying apparently to a letter from the president saying that I stand with you. What's your interpretation, Emmanuel?
Yes, so I would want to say that, the letter is, too much ado about nothing. When I was maybe 9 or 10 years old, I wrote a letter to General Buhari as head of state, commending the war against indiscipline and all of that. And he wrote back, Western heads of state or presidents have a system where they respond to letters that people write to them. So it is not magical. But having said that, I will not be non-cognizant of the fact that this has happened before. When Buhari was away in England for several months and he was rumored to be dead, the way Mitch McConnell was rumored to be dead. There was panic in the land. The vice president was doing the best to stabilize the polity. And all of a sudden, we heard that Trump had a phone call with Buhari in London. And some of us were shocked because the normal courtesy at that time was the acting president of Nigeria was Osinbajo. If Trump had any business with Nigeria, that's who he should have called, not calling Buhari in the hospital. So we knew that, it was being orchestrated. We have always known that there was an insider who was doing some runs, some private runs, but we've never been able to identify who that person is.
You mean the White
House?
Now,
yes.
Okay.
Either in the White House or within the Trump circles. Mm-hmm. So now this has happened again. This letter, and it seems to be that those particular forces are the ones who are behind it because they are giving him a shot in the arm, just the same way they gave Buhari a shot in the arm in the 2017 incident. So I don't think that there's very much significance to it. I think they're overblowing it. Trump will be Trump.
But what about the bill, the U.S. Congress bill that Congressman Gregory Steele spoke about, that it will freeze aid to Nigeria?
Yes.
How do you read that? And what's the progress on that?
Yes, I mean Nigeria has been an annual beneficiary of over $500 million in aid from the U.S. and that is just speaking about USAID programming alone. When you look at multifaceted programs, including the one that I ran as country rep for the U.S. African Development Foundation 20-something years ago, it's more than $500 million. One project I did that time was a $1 million project with Jigawa State to build 400 houses. So the footprint of American development in Nigeria is massive. Now, with this policy, with the amendment that was made to withhold aid, I think it puts pressure on the Tinubu administration to take this seriously. And I actually think that, the administration is trying in some respects. For example, the Orire kidnappers of the school children were just sentenced a few days ago. Even I couldn't believe it. That is the shortest trial in Nigeria's history. It's the shortest. They were arrested and the following week they were charged and tried and convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment. Of course, some of us are shocked that Sunday Jackson, who defended himself against a Fulani man, was sentenced to death after detention for 6 months. And then Fulani men who adopted people's children, who beheaded Yoruba teachers, are now given life imprisonment. It's an injustice, but at least the fact that somebody is finally being held accountable, we have to give them kudos. Those of us from the Middle Belt will ask, why this magical speed? Is it because of Trump, or is it because it has finally come to Yoruba land? We have to ask that question.
Well, but just like you said, let's just be thankful that we have something good to say. But I think that if you look at the charges that were preferred against those people, I'm not sure that those three people were directly linked, to the killing. But you've raised a very important question. Let us await clarification. Final question. So this CPC, the country of particular concern designation, how do you think it's going? Now there is, working together between both the American government and Nigerian government. The president wrote a letter, and then the congressman said, look, we are still going to do this. Is Nigeria coming close to a review of the CPC, or how do you see it? And it's good a thing that you reminded us before you answer that question that you were actually the director general of the U.S. African Development Foundation, if I got it right. We forgotten that so soon, but please go ahead, Emmanuel.
Yes, so the CPC has been recommended again for Nigeria, and the Nigerian government, is taking steps and they're working with what they call the joint working group with the U.S. to address some of the concerns. But not all of the concerns have been addressed. In fact, unfortunately, they're paying these lobbyists millions who are confusing issues, who are insulting activists, who are creating more problems for them than resolving. Now, the fact of the matter is this. Nigeria just needs to face up to the reality of what is happening. Recently, a Muslim woman, an Islamic teacher, was on her way to a Islamic preaching event and stopped to ask directions. And then people falsely accused her of being a kidnapper. And she was burnt alive.
Wow.
You know, this is exactly what happened to Deborah Emanuel. And there was no justice for Deborah. The problem is this, as MLK said, injustice to one is injustice to everyone. Injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. Because they were able to get away with killing Deborah Emanuel, now it has gone and visited a Muslim woman as well. So I'm aware that the Nigerian delegation is coming to the US in August for the next round of talks. A US delegation just left Nigeria last week. So there's a lot going on. But what I keep emphasizing to the Nigerian government is they need to engage with us in diaspora so that we can guide the process. Let me add that there's something that is happening which is not right. Nigerians are being arrested here in the US who have not committed any crimes, and they're being deported to Ghana. They're being sent to different countries. So I call on the Nigerian government to sign an agreement with the US for a dignified transfer of Nigerians who want to self-repatriate instead of being detained. I have friends who are currently detained by ICE for no good reason. So Nigerian government should consult with the diaspora. We should engage and forge the path forward so that our country respects human rights and is respected again in the Community of Nations.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel. Before I let you go, can you just give us an update in 30 seconds about the case of those children in Kano State?
Yes. So in Kano State, we went to collect them at the request of the government in April.
And these are orphans. These are orphans, by the way.
Yes, there were seven. Yes, there were 7 orphans who were part of 27 that were taken from a Christian orphanage, put into a Kano State orphanage. Their names were changed to Muslim names, and they were converted. So we have been on their case. Even the U.S. Embassy sent somebody to Kano to sit down with them and managed to release some of them. But we still have 7 remaining. And unfortunately, one of them died in Kano State custody in January. We have pleaded with the Kano State government, return the corpse. They said they want to bury it as a Muslim. We said that is not acceptable. Then they stopped the burial as a Muslim. Oh yeah, release the body, let us bury, and release the other children. Till this day, they have not. After when you are designated CPC, you'll be shouting that it's not fair. How can a state government be acting like terrorists? Even the terrorists and the bandits who took the general, when he died, they returned his body. Why will Kano State not return the body of Paul David Tafa, the 13-year-old, since January? These are the issues.
And just for context, so that our audience can understand what we're talking about, these are children that were born to Christian parents. Is that the case?
Yes. Yes. Young girls who gave birth out of wedlock and all of that, they put their children there. Like David Tafa's mother, she's from Southern Kaduna. She's a Christian. She puts her child there, only for Kano to come and take the child away. And then the child died in their hands. So it's not acceptable in any civilized setting for this to go without a response.
Okay, well, we hope that the governor of Kano State, I hope, is following this, because we are also going to keep an eye on this matter. It's a question of religious persecution, because if those children were born to Christian parents, and they are still underage, I think the right thing is to maintain, except they on their own converted, because they are being underage. You have to respect their faith until such a time that they can say that, okay, look, this is the faith that we want to belong to. Thank you so much, Mr. Emmanuel Debe, the former director of what was the name of the agency again, just for proper reference?
Country representative.
Country representative of the U.S. Africa Development Agency Foundation, right?
Yeah.
And that was, like you said, over 20 years ago. But we know him more as a human rights activist, a democracy activist, and also the winner of the federal government's Diaspora Merit Award. Thank you for coming to Inside Sources, and thank you for your views, and thank you for the courage of your conviction.
Thank you, and happy Diaspora Day to all Nigerians.
Happy Diaspora Day. I think that was a few days ago. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And that's the segment. In the next segment, I'm going to start an interview with a former Nigerian ambassador, Ambassador Lawrence Obishaki. And we're going to be talking about quite a lot of international issues, especially what is happening in the UN, what should be Nigeria's role in the selection of the new Secretary General, and some of the things that have been said about politics, opposition people saying that they are sending a letter to Congress and the U.S. White House regarding President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. What does that mean diplomatically? We're going to be starting that conversation today, but it's going to be continuing next edition, which is on Friday. So the first part of it is going to start today. Welcome back to Inside Sources. Today, I want to have a conversation with a diplomat around some of the developments that we've seen between Nigeria and the Americans, and also at the United Nations. So joining me again is a Nigerian diplomat, a former ambassador of Nigeria to the Republic of Benin, who has served in several locations around the world, including at the United Nations. I'd like to welcome back to Inside Sources Ambassador Dr. Lawrence Obishaki. My brother, it's good to see you again on Inside Sources.
It's a pleasure to always come here and come back to our people.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for doing that.
And learning from you.
Oh,
it's mutual.
So I know that you as a diplomat, you've been around for quite a while, and there's something that I wanted to ask you whether
just for 35 years.
See, it's not that's not a beast. So there's been so much noise about the opposition in Nigeria saying that we've gathered all the court papers in the case that involved then Mr. Bola Ahmed Tinubu in Chicago, and they've circulated it to the Congress, they've sent it to the White House, and all of that. Now, I don't want you to get into the politics because I know that is not your forte, but in diplomatic, intergovernmental relationship, will the Americans in the Congress and in the White House, will they make a big deal out of that kind of transaction, especially if it is not new?
Want me to read their mind? It depends on their interest. And it's just a pity that proverbially the Nigerian politicians are acting as if a father who got into trouble is now praying to his son who had died from the graveyard that please come and help me. Nigeria is a hegemon. Nigeria is a power bloc. Why not accident of history? Nigeria had been civilized before them. When was America born?
Well, they're celebrating 250 years
but one was Ife Empire, or your empire. Bongo Empire, Kalem
Empire, yeah.
Before all these ones, it's the accident of history and our carelessness too, selfishness of our ancestors who sold our civilization with the best of their children to them there. And who are the people, making waves today in America? Who discovered the traffic lights? A black person. Telephone and all these things. It's a pity that, like the Arab says, in the caravan, the camel can see the, back of his predecessor's head. But who sees its own? It's another person. I think we should, our politicians will do well to help Nigerians, by putting food on the table and centralizing the ball, as we say in those days. The ball is that Nigerians have a lot has been endowed. Look at the mineral we have, and yet Nigerians are suffering. I think they should rather look at that. But it is, I must say, almost shameful that we go and appeal to the Americans. The lobbyists are looking for a job.
Yeah.
They want to be paid. I always called late Professor Obiozo You know, he was my ambassador in Israel.
Yeah,
We worked under General, then Senator Nwachukwu. You know, Professor Obiano said that politicians have one thing. They always have exaggerated impression about themselves. And also, they want people to talk about them. And then if nobody has spoken, they will claim that somebody has spoken. And he gave he said a politician is a man who dresses up in the morning, looks at his wife in the mirror, and asks his wife, how do I look? When the wife, of course, the wife will say, you look nice. He will say, thank God the people have spoken. The people have spoken. It will be very interesting. I don't busy myself with them. I pray to God that we will arrive one day, but my interest is international relations. That's what I'm trained for, diplomacy.
Yeah.
And
that's why I wanted to know that, because in my view, and this is my own honest opinion, I don't see it as a big moment, something that is such a big deal to have to be telling them, these are documents that are in their own country, these are things that they are already aware about, and these are things that have even been litigated both in Nigeria and abroad. But let's move away from there and talk about the letter that the U.S. president.
It is what the civet eats that he presents to his mate when they visit him.
Absolutely. And I'm going to read the portions of the letter and ask you a question. This was the letter that was released by the
letters.
Very, very important one. Okay. President Trump to President.
That letter.
Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting.
President Trump to President Tinubu.
Because from Trump.
Yeah. He said, thank you for your thoughtful letter. Your kind words mean a great deal to me, and I appreciate your decisive leadership on behalf of the Nigerian people. I applaud your resolve to tackle the issues plaguing your nation, especially the violence affecting Christian communities. Yeah. And it is a true honor to stand with you in the fight against terrorists and to make the Federal Republic of Nigeria stronger and more prosperous. He went on, and of course, he spoke about how he is proud that the U.S. deployed their Special Operation Forces, which is among the most elite military units anywhere in the world. You know how Mr. Trump will always speak
to his own people too.
Exactly. And then he concluded, he said, I look forward to our continued discussions over the course of my presidency. Now, you are a diplomat. This letter is coming up. This is the first kind of letter that we see between Trump and the president, although this is happening in the third year of the president.
He probably has written others, but not made public.
Okay. But do you see any kind of connection between the fact that the U.S. president is writing this almost a love letter to the Nigerian president?
We call it a friend.
Exactly. Is it connected in any sense with the fact that, now we have an ambassador, or in fact, two ambassadors in the U.S.?
Well, it may not be. Let's look at the larger picture. America is interested in, quote, making America great. They have a competitor now. Even though China is not saying, look, I'm the competitor. Look at, if America explodes one device somewhere, China will explode too. They have the money now. And of course, Russia is still busy fighting its own survival war at Ukraine. You see, President Trump, we know his own ideology, and we know how he sets about doing his own things. So we should always look at situation, issues in the context. What's happening? He himself is having challenges at home. And Nigeria is a good bride to court. Nigeria has mineral resources, and Trump has not made, reputation about it. Yeah. He wants it.
Yeah.
And he even says that he was ready to take over Greenland for what is there. If Nigeria will be an easy picking, why not? If it's unfair to take it to write a letter, why not?
Interesting.
So President is in their interest. They will do whatever will favor them. They want to remain big again. That's how I want to use that word. They have been big. They want to remain big again. And to be big now is to have resources. I just read somewhere out of 48 rare, minerals, 42 are in Africa in abundance.
Wow.
And Nigeria has almost all.
Wow.
So What are we talking about? Why not be a friend of somebody who can give? So
Interesting. So your view is that this is something that was going to happen anyway.
Yeah.
Is not necessary because I had some moves, spoke with some of the ambassadors, and they said that that kind of letter couldn't have come out because there were no relationship at the highest level.
May not be. But you can also look at it the other way around. Why should he write if he could send his ambassador? Why did he have to write? Why did you have to? Because it's a direct
communication.
Communication.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's one of the challenges of current diplomats. Because there was a time when you have to send an envoy to go and deliver because there was no way of communication. Now they can communicate directly. They can send emails. All of them have Twitter or the X. So I think it's okay. Having ambassador we've said it several times on this platform. Yeah. It facilitates things. There's no doubt. Ambassador can remind him. You remind me, this is what you promised, sir, about the letter and this and this. That's why it's there. They are ears, eyes of their principal, wherever they are. And they will all do it. You make sure that something good is said about your president, your principal.
Yeah, but this is good for Nigeria.
Well, anything that says good about our country is good for us. We are not demarketing. We have been demarketed several times ago. Like somebody said that, look, South Africa has been globalized. Then we've been globalized since the slave trade. So we have been demarketed for so long.
Interesting.
And our politicians are not helping us. They are not helping us.
Well, that's why we're here, to help them, to help us.
Yeah.
So let's move on. I wanted to also talk about the United Nations. I remember that you were
the election desk officer.
Okay.
For 4 years.
At the UN.
The election desk officer of Nigeria.
Okay.
In the United Nations.
Which meant that all elections.
For Nigeria elections.
Okay. So this conversation is going to continue on Friday edition of Inside Sources. Thank you for watching. And there you have it, another edition of Inside Sources. Like we always say, Nigeria will prevail. It means Nigeria will win. Partly because we will continue to push the big and major issues. My name is Laolu Akonde. Thank you for watching and see you by the grace of God at the next edition.